Episode 19 of the Bmoney Beastin podcast. I am here this morning, as you can see, my man Josh Bosken hanging out in his backyard, which is a pretty cool backdrop for this whole thing. Dude, I've known you now probably, 8, 9, 10 years, something at this point.
How old's Bryce? Bryce is 15, so probably about 8 years.
Yeah, dude, because like the first time I ever met you, we had a kid that you guys had that beat him at like regions or something, like when we were little. And I don't know, it like aggravated him because that was that one day he kind of got over the hump, right? He beat remember that kid Caden Arnold? Remember him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boyd?
Boyd, yeah. He had never beaten Caden Arnold, and that day he beat Caden Arnold, and he had never beat Jackson Lane at that point, and he upset Jackson. Wow. And the one kid that beat him this is when they were like, I don't know, 7. But he uploaded got beat by that kid, Connor. Y'all had it. Yeah. And that kid won regions that year. And I remember he got so frustrated about it. He's like, dude, I beat the best kid. And he goes, I lost to this. Who is this kid? And I remember that. And then it was like a week later, you posted like this day camp at the Jones Center, right? And I'm like, hey, man, I bet you that kid will be up here. He goes, yeah, we're going to go. We're going to go.
Like, there was he?
I don't think he was.
Probably not.
And we went up there, and that's where we first actually met you.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to like state that year, and they did Tennessee AAU before they kicked us out because we're Georgia kids and all that. And remember, I was pissed about it.
Oh, you as hell.
Yeah, I was like, dude, I was like, what am I supposed to do? Like, we had 1 year there, we didn't even go to state because I didn't know what to do, right? Like, So we went up at state, and I guess like he wasn't supposed to win, make the finals. It wasn't supposed to happen. And he upset Caden Fowler, and then he upset a kid from Memphis, and he was like all jacked up, and he seen you walk, and he says, hey man, I'm in the finals, dude. And you look at him, you go, that's awesome, dude. Go get your singlet. And then you started talking to me, and you're like, hey, and you handed me a flyer, right, for like summer camps. And that was, 2015, 16, whatever it was. And dude, we've been up there every summer since.
Every summer.
Every summer since. And dude, like, I've always admired what like Cleveland's built, right? Like I've seen it firsthand so much being up there, because we would even go up there at times during freestyle, right? And like drop in for practice and things. And I preached it on this podcast, like structure. You have to be structured, right? And consistent. And dude, nobody does it better than Cleveland, right? Nobody. And I want to know, like, I always refer to you as the utility guy, right? Like when people ask me, like, what you've been up there, what do they do? And I'll tell them, I'll be like, you have to have that guy that you can put anywhere in the program that has like a base of he has good knowledge base, and he's going to be there. He's going to work hard. And dude, you're that guy, right? Like you're that guy. You've done everything at Cleveland. You were the boys coach at one time. You run the club. You run, now you're the girls coach. I'm sure you've run the little girls program at one point. Like you've been kind of moved around. Kind of explain that to me, man. Like, what do you feel like is the base of why Cleveland is so successful?
Well, I mean, I think it starts well before I even got here. Coach Miller created a rich tradition, and not just Coach Miller, Coach Loxton from Bradley Central, Coach Turner Jackson from Bradley Central. The area. I moved to Cleveland in 2007, and when I tell this my first introduction to wrestling in the area. I moved there in 2007. Our first dual meet with Cleveland and Bradley was the January of 2008. There was 3,000 people there. There was 3,000 people I come from Science Hill in East Tennessee, where we had good wrestling, and we had good support, and we had in one of our rival dual meets, we might have had, I don't know, 200 or 300 people, which was great. And then you hear and you see, at the time it was Bradley Central, so you see Bradley everywhere, Matt Kimming, all these legendary like Tennessee wrestlers, and you get there and you're not ready for it. You're not ready for it. I mean, we walk into the Bradley, the Bradley High School for the dual meet, and there's I'm not exact. There's 3,000 people there, and they're knowledgeable. You know, they know what's going on. They know what to yell, and they beat the brakes off of us. That was my first experience with it. So, like, for me personally, I'm an easily motivated person. And at the time, all my friends were Bradley people. You know, I lived with a Bradley guy. I hung out with Bradley guys. So all I had to hear for a long time was how crummy Cleveland was and how much better Bradley was. So right there got me motivated to. I mean, I obviously passion's consistent with everybody that loves that. You know, anybody that loves what they do, they're passionate about it. But the consistency, what you touched on earlier, is the X factor. And I knew like if I was going to make an impact impact at Cleveland, it just wasn't going to happen in 2 or 3 years. And I just knew that anything that I touched, I wanted it to be great. And I wanted to kind of rub it back in these Bradley's guys' faces, my buddies, you know, and it's worked. They're Cleveland supporters now. So
there you go.
I mean, I like winning. I mean, I don't want to do anything. I wasn't raised to do anything half-assed. So like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it as hard as I can and as good as I can, regardless of the level of experience or skill set for the kids. I honestly like working with the kids better than I do the high school age, just because they're impressionable and I can, you know, make an impact. And I enjoy watching, you know, Bryson grow up from 7 to 15 and watch the struggles. You know, I enjoy that, man. I enjoy the struggles because the end of the road's always a lot better. And it, you know, it's what makes them great. What makes wrestling great is the struggle that we all have to go through to be successful. But I love it. I love coaching. I love where I'm at. I love the support that we have. Now it's got to be manifest. Like we have to create this culture year in, year out. It's not like it, you know, people are going to support Cleveland wrestling because we're Cleveland wrestling. Like when kids grow up, I tell everybody this, like when kids grow up, they don't like see wrestling on TV. So like we have to, like, they see football, they see baseball. So we have to put it in their face and say, hey man, wrestling's pretty cool and we're pretty good at it here. So you should let your kids try it out. And we're able to sell some on it, and some of them just don't get it because it's not a part of their family history. So like, it's a constant. It's every year's a new year. Every year's a new year to introduce wrestling to another 5-year-old, and that's what we try to do every year.
Well, man, you know what you just said there. You're like, you know, it's every year's a new year. We're starting over. You know, like it's not everybody doesn't do this, whatever. And you just said on TV, you know, you don't see baseball. You see baseball, basketball, football, whatever. Dude, you know, outside of Flo, who's doing like a really good job with like documentaries and, you know, big events and whatever. And the Beat the Streets thing the other night was kind of cool with Muggsy and Caden Henschel. Outside of that, you're honestly right, dude. Like me personally, I didn't even know what the hell wrestling was till I was in 6th grade. You know, I thought wrestling was Rey Mysterio and The Rock.
Yeah.
You know, so like in terms of that, it goes back to something I've been preaching: social media, right? Like it is a powerful tool that, again, I always refer back to Cleveland. I'm like, okay, you got programs out here that like for instance, dude, I don't know how good we're going to be outside of the state of Georgia in Ringgold this year, but I know in the state of Georgia, we're going to be a pretty good team, right? Like I think we got some good pieces, and nobody knows that unless you read the Catoosa County News, right? Like nobody knows. We got an Instagram page, got like 200 people on it, and it's the same 200 people that were there 5 years ago. So there's nobody in the community knows what's going on. Nobody, like nothing.
Yeah.
But I always refer back to Cleveland, and I'm like, dude, like they're promoting this. They're promoting their kids. They're promoting everything. And, you know, Sean's doing a pretty good job with that up at Minion. Like you see him pretty consistent with that kind of thing. And then, you know, Pitts does a good job with Grindhouse, you know, posting different things. And, you know, there are, when you see programs, you know, of course they're training centers, but when you see a program, a school-based program like Cleveland, that 10 times a day, you're seeing something about the Cleveland program. You know, the girls, you know, they have their own little, and I really enjoy that too, that like the girls page, that's just for the little guys, you know, little girls.
Yeah.
you see that stuff, and you see that C or the Cleveland Wrestling Club, which I think is really cool, by the way. I hadn't told you that, but I think, rebranding, that's really neat.
Yeah.
So you see this on a consistent basis, and that goes back to what I said, structure and consistency, right? And since you don't see the sport of wrestling on TV, on ESPN, you see like the NCAA's once a year, but outside of that, you really don't see anything. When you start seeing that on social media on a regular basis, that's an easy way to pull kids, right? Hey, that's pretty cool. Or, kids are very impressionable anyway. So you have a pretty cool like singlet design, right? Like some of them girl singlets y'all had a couple years ago were pretty cool.
Yeah.
And like I seen a post a few days ago. Like I don't know who runs that program. You can tell me about it in a second. But you had like 30 little girls in there, like training.
Yeah.
Like little girls. And
Yeah.
it's like, how did that happen? Well, you got to let people know it's there, right?
Yeah.
And nobody does that better than the Cleveland program.
Yeah.
So like with you always had, and you built the Bosken Train brand too, right? Yeah. Like kind of offset. And dude, like that's pretty, people know what that is now too. Like, especially in our area, like within a tri-state area, everybody knows like what that is. He runs camps and he's the Cleveland. Well, at the time you were the higher calling coach when it started. And, like, how did you, I asked, I can't say his name, Kuwamba. We had an awesome conversation. The guy at Campbellsville, young guy, he's a sophomore. And I asked him this same question I'm going to ask you. I said, dude, how did you get so good at like social media marketing? And he told me he had a love for film. So like he's studying film in college, which I think is really cool, right? Like he said, I want to be a director. But you, man, it had to be like a trial and error kind of thing, right? But
it still is. I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't either. I just know that, it's the most important word. It's consistent. Like it's consistency. I know I have to post every day to keep our community. It's for nothing else but to keep our community. I don't care if anybody else knows about Cleveland wrestling.
Right.
I'm glad it's getting to there. It's getting to that point. But like my whole vision and I want our community to know everything that's going on with our program. So maybe somebody sees it that has a daughter or a son, and like, man, that's look what these coaches are doing for these kids, getting them to Ivy. Like we just put a kid at Cornell, we put a kid at Air Force Academy, put a kid at West Point. We have 2 going to Air Force Academy. We have one that just signed with the Naval Academy. We have one at Campbell. We're getting these kids life-changing opportunities that I just want other people in our community to see and say, hey, I want my kid wrestling. And I started doing it in 2007 when I got here. Heath Esslinger was the head coach. Coach Phillips was the middle school coach. Hatcher was the club coach. And I was fortunate just to learn and sit back and learn from all of them. And whatever they needed done, that was my job. Whatever they didn't want to do, that's what the young buck was doing. But the one thing I started doing right away, and I posted a video yesterday in 2011, but I just started filming and documenting like the hard work our kids put in, and we weren't even winning at that time. Like we were getting beat up pretty bad, but I was hoping everything in my head that would come true. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted to document from 2007 to where we started and where we're at now. It's changed a lot. So, our kids work hard. Everybody says, the world is full of soft kids and all that. That's bullshit.
I agree.
We got soft people that won't push kids. We had a practice yesterday, man. Our kids were struggling. Tears and snot coming out of their nose, and they pushed through it. And when they got done, they all came up and thanked the coaches. Like they're not soft. They're not pushed that often.
Right.
And they kids like structure. Kids like to get pushed. It's not comfortable, but when it's all said and done, they're thankful for it. So it's been fun. I don't know what I'm doing. I know that every day I'm going to post something. So a lot of times I don't even know what that's going to be. I get on Canva and I create some graphics and I just throw it up, and people look into it into some things deeper than it should. And I'm like, man, I'm just putting stuff out there. Like we have Who's Number One coming up October 26th. So for the next 3 weeks, I'll be posting about that.
Dude, I've always wanted to be a part of that, right? Like, but I'm of course on the wrong state, right? And I brought that up with Khalil. You know, he's wrestling, dude. He's got the greatest story, by the way. If you don't know that guy,
yeah, listen a little bit. He started wrestling late, right?
Well, he didn't start wrestling until he was a sophomore. His story is crazy, and he won a state championship his senior year. So he wrestled for like 2.5 years, won state, got recruited to Life University, was there 2.5 years. Hurt his elbow, like dislocated his elbow. And, you know, it's a lot harder to recover from when you're older than when you're younger.
Yeah.
And eventually dropped out of school, got a bunch of life experience. You know, he said, I worked all the jobs nobody wanted. And then he ended up back at Life last year. He went 19-3. He kind of messed up his knee a little bit. And he's now using all his eligibility. He's, you know, in his 30s now, and he's wrestling his senior year at Life University.
Yeah, he does a great job on social media too. I mean, like,
oh, absolutely, yeah.
I don't even know him.
Dude,
I know Charlie, and I see all this stuff they did. I mean, that dude's a master on the social media too. You know, Charlie does a great job with it. And I think anybody that wants to be successful has to. Even if it's not their forte or something they're good at, they have to figure it out. If they don't figure it out, they're not going to grow.
Dude, like, it's amazing that you said that because, like, you know, this Bmoney Beastin thing, like, I didn't have a clue what this was. And I've never said this publicly to anybody, I don't think. But the way it kind of started was one year, you know, you know me, right? I've worked in the cable industry, you know, forever. I run a school that trains cable contractors. That's my main job. And one year, like, I guess I did something wrong and I paid a lot in taxes, right? And I'm like, dude, I got to do something here. And my CPA told me, she's like, hey, you need to open an LLC. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what that is or what this could be. And Bryson brought it up, actually. He's like, dude, you remember that gamer tag? And you remember when he was little, he'd always hashtag everything with like Bmoney Beastin.
Yeah.
And I was like, I still had no idea what that was. I thought it was cool. I was like, this is unique to you, you know? And eventually I was talking to Pitts one day and I was like, dude, I got this idea. And he's telling me how he does things. You know, he's got his little shop down in Calhoun. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And I said, how do I didn't know anything about graphic arts. I didn't know anything about anything. Right. So he told me to reach out to Quantal, who I've talked to over the years, right? And eventually we kind of got on a conversation. He made the first logo that's up there in the corner there. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, let's go with that. And then fast forward, you know, it's just shifted and shifted and shifted. And then eventually we built like wrestling Pokemon. I don't know what's going on, but dude, the card game's pretty cool when you sit down and play it. And we're building on to that. And, you know, I still have no idea what I'm doing. I just know that I want to be consistent and structured with it. And I want to reach out to people that are in the space and I want to learn. And that's what I'm doing, you know, and I've been around it long enough with him that I've seen what works, what don't work. I understand like little things like, and you can see this too. I think a couple of years ago, we went up, you asked us to get on a dual team up at Blackman. Do you remember that? It was like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And
over Christmas?
I think so. Yeah. That's the first time I'd ever been up there where they had like the fire mats that were actually they're pretty cool, dude. You got to give them credit. Those are pretty cool. But we went up there and, you know, like we were smashing all these teams and you're like, well, I'll get him a match. And you remember he had an exhibition match with Noah Watkins.
Oh, yeah. I do remember that.
And, dude, they went at it. And that was a hell of a match.
Yeah.
And, like, late in the match, he got taken down like in like double overtime or something. And he got so pissed and he threw his headgear and you, like, jerked him up and, like, hey, stop that shit, you know, or whatever. And, dude, I remember, like, watching these little details. And that's just one instance, right? Like, over the years of, like, how you handle yourself. Like, you can kind of see, like, before the match, he was pumped, right? He's like, I'm ready to go. And then, you know, there's other instances where we've been at tournaments where you could see it in his face where he's just a little worried, a little nervous, and he never wrestled well, right?
Tulsa.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Now, granted, the next year he went up there and got 5th, but at the same time,
that first year was an experience.
It was a disaster. It absolutely was. So it's one of those, you know, I've kind of learned those things, and now that I'm getting feedback from all these big high level people, it kind of all translates the same, right? Like across the board, regardless of state, location, whatever. And dude, I'm really just enjoying that aspect of the Bmoney Beastin brand. To get off of that, something I want to bring up, you guys do really well too in development is, I was around back then when like Jose and Dominic showed up, right? And from what I remember, didn't they come through the beginner program?
Yeah. So Dominic started in our beginner program 4 years ago, 5 years, maybe 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Our beginner program runs November, December, and he started it. And he wasn't good. I didn't even know he was in the program, honestly. And there's so many. There's 100 kids in there.
Oh yeah.
So he was in the program, and then January hits, and the numbers have thinned out. So he's still there. So I start to learn who he was. And then there's this little dorky kid in the bleachers with glasses on reading a book. And I'm like, who's this? And then his mom comes down and says, hey, this is Jose or Dominic's brother. He'd like this. Apparently Dominic was going home and whooping the crap out of Jose. They, the Corderos, they're workers, and they are obsessive, and they train all the time. So from that first day, even the beginners, Alex and Giselle, they got a mat, they put it in the basement, and Jose wasn't even wrestling yet. They were just going home practicing for Dominic and using Jose, and Dominic starts whooping him. And then Jose's got something in him that's like, this, I don't like this. I'm going to give it a try. And then that January, he started, and they've been training year round since then.
Dude, that's the thing, man. Like those two, I tell people, like when we're up at Minion and they come up, right? I'm like, if I could adopt a kid, that's the perfect practice partner for my kid, it's Dominic, right?
They're perfect for everybody because they train hard, and they're respectful, and they're good kids, and they do everything right.
Dude, like, and that's the thing. Like, I bring it up, like, in North Georgia, they started that North Georgia League, 3 or 4 years ago, I guess now.
Yeah.
All those little club teams, they don't even start till like January, right? Yeah. And they end at like, maybe the first week in March or something.
Yeah.
So you got like 3 months there, right? And for a little kids club, like a beginner type thing, that works, right? But outside of that, like for instance, I'll call it out. I don't care. I'm pissing off everybody on this podcast. I called out GHSA the other day saying, dude, you water this down to like a 12 or 8 man bracket or something at state, and you drag it out for 3 days, right? Like, but like, dude, the youth clubs in this area down here, man, they start late, like, and then after that's over, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Like nothing. Like, I think Jacob Harris will start doing a good job. He's down at Lafayette now. I think they'll start building something, which they always had a ton of kids down there, right?
Yeah.
But like in reality, in North Georgia, if you don't go to Matt or now up at Minion with Sean, that's really in this little not too far away. That's like there's not a whole lot. I think Dindy's got something going on in Lafayette, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But dude, it's like you guys have such like we do this to here, we do this to here. We do this to here. And dude, it's just not rocket science how to get really good at this. It's just not. But it seems like there's not enough people in all of these areas that want to put in the time to make it successful. Yeah. They want to rely on the backs of these training centers and in the backs of, but if you can build that within, like it kills me right now that Hamilton's at Dalton. Right? Yeah. Dude, Billy's at Ringgold with us.
Yeah.
Okay. Like he would be such a resource.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, dude. And like, even if he's just the guy that comes in, runs a tough practice, maybe runs a club a few days a week, dude, there you go. And he lives like, I don't know, 4 minutes from the high school.
That's wild.
There's no like, we don't have that, like where you pulled Dominic and Jose from a beginner program that you started. Yes. And dude, if schools did that more regular, like on a consistent basis, you got, okay, November, December. All right. And if whoever wants to keep going, we got club now from this date to this date. Yeah. And if you want to wrestle freestyle, we do that from here to here. And dude, it's just so consistent. Yeah. And dude, there's no wonder that, you guys have won so many state championships. I lost count like a few years ago. Yeah. And it's the same thing with like Rockmart. I'm going to give Rockmart credit, right? They're down there like kind of in a remote area. I don't know. Have you ever been down that way? Like,
no, I haven't.
It's kind of a remote, like kind of area, like Gorilla's down there, right?
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Butler runs the club down there, and it's only been open a few years, but it's kind of a remote kind of area. But they're so consistent that they even got thrown out of their wrestling room, and which I think is insane for any school that's trying to better a sports program to say, hey, you can't use this out of season, which is crazy. But they're like, okay, screw you. They took a bunch of mats and took them to a church. And they still had 30, 40 kids coming in there. And they've won 3 or 4 in a row. Yeah. Dude, it's just not rocket science. Yeah. All right. We can complain and bitch and moan about how we should do things, but you guys do it right. You have a unique story that I think should be told real quick. Dude, years ago, over the course of, the near decade I've known you, you've kind of told me snippets like of how you got to where you are. And I've always found it interesting. You even told me about like time in Japan.
Yeah.
So like kind of tell us, like whoever sees this, like I know you graduated from Science Hill up in where is that, Johnson City?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my dad was military. He was in the Marine Corps ever since I was little. So every 2 years we moved. Every 2 years we moved. In 4th grade, we got stationed in Okinawa, Japan. So we moved to Okinawa. I had wrestled right before we left. I had wrestled 1 year. We were living in Cincinnati, Ohio. I wrestled 1 year in their little league in 3rd grade. And then at the 4th grade, we ended up getting stationed in Okinawa. And where we were at on base didn't have wrestling. So we just dropped it. Didn't think nothing about it. Like, tried it. It was fun. Then I just played soccer and did what every other kid does. So we lived there for 3 years. Moved back. We got stationed in Johnson City. We lived there for 2 years. 8th grade, moved. He got restationed in Quantico, Virginia. We were there for about a year, and then some stuff was going on. And then they ended up moving my mom and myself back to Johnson City because the coach that was there was like a father figure to me, and we knew that like that's where I wanted to wrestle. And so they moved me back there. I went to high school in Science Hill for 4 years, and then moved on to Chattanooga. And then
when you were at UTC, we've had Pitts, Michael Keefe, and of course Quan Tall's told me stories. Okay. Yeah. When you were getting recruited there and got recruited into UTC, was Brands there at the time?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't even getting recruited. I wasn't. I mean, I don't even know if they knew my name until the state tournament. I had a pretty good state tournament, and I made a little run. And then Heath Esslinger, who was the assistant at UTC at the time, under Brands. Yeah, Brands was there.
Okay.
And then they came up and talked to me, and I'm like, heck yeah, I want to wrestle in college. Like, I was just fortunate that somebody was interested in me. And then, jumped on that. That was an experience.
Do you have any, like, I'm going to give you a couple puns here that I've heard over the past, several years, but now over the past several weeks. Pitt said that Quantal had the worst year of Terry Brands.
First year that, I wasn't there, but I've heard, for me, it's hard to imagine that it was worse than what we had because it was bad. Right. It was challenging, but even from the guys that were there the year before, they said he was there to run everybody off.
Yeah. And Pitt said, he's told me several times, he's been like, dude, he just drop us off like in Flintstone and say, hey, meet me back. I'll see you later.
He did that with us at 2 a.m. Like,
yeah. Like, so, and then like Quantal would be like, hey, be on weight tomorrow. Just randomly, just be on weight. So, like, there was a lot of little things, and Michael Keefe was talking about how, like, it was, like, the year that he All-Americaned, right?
Yeah.
That he like usually you start tapering off there towards the end, getting ready. And he said Brands had him in a gym, and they were like running circuits, like we're doing rope climbs and dumbbell curls and up downs and whatever. We're going through this circuit, and it's like 4 days out. Yeah. And he says the thing is, I never got tired.
And they believed in that. Like, man, I was so fortunate. Like, I never touched the mat. Like, I was, but I was so fortunate that I got to learn not only from Brands and the people that he brought in as coaching staff, but from Pitts. Man, he's one of my favorite. I tell everybody, he's one of my favorite wrestlers ever to watch.
Oh yeah,
the Keefe brothers. Nobody understands what they were able to do unless you were in the room and they had their hands on you, because it was like they gave you panic attacks, like trying to wrestle with them, like because you didn't know because they were a little unorthodox in their style, but they weren't going to lose because like they had Brands in their corner and they believed in that. They believed that they could beat anybody. And it was, man, the team that was there when I was there, they beat Ohio State 3 years in a row. Like, right. I mean, Coach Knox, the head coach at Cleveland right now, he was on that team, beat Lance Palmer. Like, they from Ohio State, like they believed it. As a coach now, that 3 years that I was there taught me everything. Taught me a large portion of like what I needed to know to be a successful coach.
Dude, when you got a situation where, Matt said it this way. He said, when you're coming from like a small school, right? Like a small area, you're not getting the blue chip guys. You kind of had to have some kind of an edge, right? And he felt like Terry Brands did an amazing job doing that, where it was just so unorthodox the way that he did things. Like it'd just be random and sporadic. He said you'd have practice, and you had a schedule. You're going to practice this day, this day, this day, but you don't know when the next workout's coming until after that workout's over. You got another practice, but he said he'd just call you at 6 o'clock in the evening. Hey, be here in an hour, or
that was probably because of like the wild ones like me on the team that he had to keep in check. Because if he told us a schedule, we're gonna have some fun.
Dude, yeah,
he wouldn't tell us, so he would surprise us. So he did his best to keep us in check as long as he could.
Dude, Michael Keefe told me. He said, "Dude, he's like, luckily he said I wasn't out partying or anything. He goes, I was just laser focused. Me and my brother. He said, so I didn't have to worry. He didn't worry about us, but he goes, there was dudes, that were out doing their thing,
Yeah,
and
the cool thing about the Keefe brothers, man, is that's exactly how they were, and they never were like judgmental. They were some of the coolest dudes ever.
They still are, man.
I know. The night, but they would get in there, and I'm talking about like rip your soul out of your body during the match, man. Like, dude, they were good. They were so good.
I learned yesterday, and I've known Michael and Josh for a lot of years, right? Like, they were seniors at Ringgold when I was like in 8th grade, right? Something like that, right? And I remember watching them wrestle in high school, like going to duels and stuff. And, I didn't really know them real well, but I knew who they were. It was pretty evident they're really good at this. And then you fast forward several years. Last year Michael Keefe was Bryson's math teacher.
Wow.
Right? So
you're old, man.
Dude, I know. Yeah, I'm getting there. Like, dude, I got the gray going on. It's getting bad. But Michael, he would come in, from time to time over at the Ringgold room. They'd have like high school practice or whatever, and he'd jump in and kind of help out a little bit. And I was in there one day just kind of chatting with him. And, I knew like most of their story, but I didn't know a lot of it. And, he told me, he said, dude, he goes, I didn't even start wrestling until I was in the 9th grade. And when they told me that, and then I mentioned that when we did a podcast, I was like, dude, you started in the 9th grade, and less than 7 years later, you placed in the toughest tournament in the world. Like, but he was telling me stuff like, that I didn't even realize. He's like, dude, we didn't, we had a single mom. He said, we didn't have a lot of money. He said, we'd break into the wrestling room. He goes, we had a built-in practice partner, like him and Josh. He said, we'd break into the practice room, and like Billy Broom would like open the door and just smile and shut it and just walk away. He's like, they were obsessive.
Yeah.
And you can't teach that, right? Like you just can't teach that. You either have that or you don't. I'll be honest with you. Bryson don't have that. He's not obsessive. He loves it.
Not many kids do.
When he's away from it, okay, I got this I'm gonna do, right?
Yeah, which is cool.
Yeah, now in the room, I'm gonna do what I'm supposed to do. But when after that, leave me alone. And if you have that obsessive, like they caught up so fast. And dude, like that's a story that you don't hear often. Like you can see, like I talked about Khalil, he started as a sophomore, won a state title as a senior. That's cool. That's doable, especially in Georgia with 6-7 classification. Not watering it down or anything, but that's a big accomplishment. But then you look at Michael Keefe and Josh Keefe, dude. Like Jesus, like to go from a freshman in high school, they got plucked out of the. He told me they got plucked out of the lunchroom. Him and Josh used to always fight with each other. And Billy Broom said, "Hey, you want to wrestle?" And he said that after the first day, he goes, "Dude, we were obsessed. We're like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I'm going to be the best." He said when he was going to college, right? Pitts beat him his sophomore year in the finals in state. And I didn't know that either. I knew they had wrestled, but I didn't know that. And he told me, he said, "Dude, when I went to college, I'm going to beat everybody in the room. I'm going to be the best in the world." He just had that mindset, dude.
I believe it.
And so, like, for them to have the disadvantages economically that they had and just the drive and the will, like, dude, that's an amazing story. And to this day, they're great people. They're really Christian based and faith based, just great people.
Yeah, they are.
So, dude, you've been all over the place, but you've been here now for what, 15 years ish?
This will be the 18th year.
18 years, jeez, dude, that's wild, bro.
Yeah.
I tell you what, man, like you've had so many different like experiences, and Hatcher told me this, right? He said that when he was with Gable at Iowa, he said that Gable told him that he was going to be a better coach than a wrestler. He said, you're going to be better at coaching than you are at actually wrestling. And dude, I think you probably feel that way, right? Because you won state in high school, right? Yeah. But probably.
I don't know. I can't really point my finger on what it was, but I never took it as serious as probably as I should have. And maybe it's, I don't know. I don't know what it was, but I know that I find a lot of enjoyment watching kids reach their goals. And I don't ever remember feeling the same way about myself competing. I knew I loved it. Like that's all I wanted to do was wrestle, but I find I enjoy getting in the room with a kid that's never wrestled before at 5 years old and teaching them one move, and then maybe seeing that move being like, I enjoy the journey of a kid's wrestling career much more than I did competing.
Development, everybody's got like a knack, man, and like your knack, and I've noticed it, over the years, like your knack is development. Like you have like.
The sport is so cool.
Yeah.
The sport is so cool because just when you think it's evolved past where it can go, some creative wrestler takes it to another level. There's just watching Bo Bassett right now, and you're like, how can he keep this up?
Right.
And he's doing it against the best guys at the NCAA. Like, so you're like, you can wrestle like that,
Prior to that, Ben Askren kind of created the art of scrambling.
Yeah.
Like before that, you didn't see these wild, funky scrambles.
Yeah.
So, like, you're right, dude. It keeps evolving and evolving and evolving. I do got a question for you as a coach, and I want your perspective on this, though. A lot of clubs that you can go into, and I'm not saying any particular or anything, it's just in general. You got coaches that'll teach this and 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 this. Some of the best guys I've ever seen, right? Even on a youth level, middle school age group kids, whatever, they're very basic, right? Harrison Murdoch doesn't do anything specific, right? He sprawls, he blasts you, he runs like power halves.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't do anything flashy. Jackson Lane doesn't do anything flashy, right? He's just gonna muscle you and he's gonna stay in good position. And you got like these kids, that really don't do anything really flashy or, whatever, that are just hammers. And dude, like, I think there's something to be said for that. How do you look at that? Like,
so the way we teach it, I mean, our foundation's always position. So like, we're not teaching moves. We're teaching position. So we're getting on a single leg. How do you correct your position when you're on a single leg? You're getting on a double leg. The position is the same regardless of where you're from. I don't care, Russia, Germany, Japan. The correct position is the correct position. Right. If your head's down and your butt's up, that's bad, right? So so you're teaching. We reinforce the right positions to be in, and then we allow creativity to get there. Because everybody's different. Bryson's different than Dominic, and Dominic's different than my son, and my son's different than you know what I'm saying? So like the way they're going to get to the scoring positions are going to be different, but what they do when they get there stays the same. So we really reinforce fundamentals and positions once you're in all positions, really, on bottom, on everywhere. But that's pretty much our nucleus for our system. Is we're gonna get in the right positions and work them more than anything else, and then we're gonna add some creativity and add the layers to it and all that.
Yeah, because like if you have, and that's like going back to structure and consistency. That's a structured approach, right? Which improves results in anything that you do, man. Like if me and you were at McDonald's right now, we were flipping hamburgers, we'd have a process of how the hell we're going to flip that hamburger.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, like especially in something as intricate as wrestling is. A conversation I had with Dane Whitted, we were talking about that, and I even brought up like you could probably have 20 variations of like a slide by, right? Like 20 different ways. But why teach somebody 20 different ways to do something?
Yeah.
Get them really good at one way of doing it, right? Yeah. And that's kind of like, and I'll give Murdoch, Nathan Murdoch, a lot of credit, dude. Like when he was bringing Harrison up, he didn't teach him anything but like, we're going to stay in good position. I'm going to teach you how to blast people, and I'm going to teach you how to wear them out on top. And dude, to this day, he'll be 15 in February. That kid wrestles the same now that he did when he was 6 years old.
Yeah, but the guys like that, what you're not saying is Harrison, Jackson Lane, those dudes wrestle hard.
They do, yeah. Oh, yeah, of course.
And they wrestle to win.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's no sitting back. And that's the difference. They stay in great position, but Harrison and Jackson, they're winners because they expect to win. And their mindset is like Jackson's a stud, man. Like, because Jackson goes out there and doesn't think anybody can beat him.
Right. No, he doesn't.
That's why he's winning.
Because I remember the year that switch like flipped for him too, right? Like, because we grew up with him, right? Yeah. And John and them. And dude, there was like a couple of years there where he was like on the front. You could just see it coming. Does that make sense? Like he was always really good. And then like it was like 4 or 5 years ago, like that switch flipped. And dude, he was like, he upset the Minnesota coach's kid at back one year.
Yeah,
Eggum, yeah. And dude, like it just all of a sudden, boom, I'm just gonna kill everybody.
Yeah, I remember that.
And he's doing it. And like dude, as an 8th grader, winning high school state. Like, dude, props to him, man. Like, I love Jackson. He's a good kid, and he's a stud, man. Yeah. But, like, and that's part of it, too. Like, the mental side of things, like, you kind of have to believe that you can win. And I'll tell you this, and this is no shot at anybody. When we were at Deep South, Mason Jacob told Bryson, right before he wrestled Jose, he said, he's going to beat the shit out of you. And I heard, not exactly in those words, but like that, whatever sentiment. And I was just standing there and I was like, dude, that's going to like mentally just kill him. And I was like, dude, we're not going to, I didn't expect to win the match, but I was just like, dude, wrestle hard, right? Like that's all you can do. And he looked at Mason Jacob and he goes, nah, dude, he's not going to kill me. And it was the first time I seen like a mature side about it where it was like, I may lose, but I'm going to go wrestle. And dude, he wrestled him hard, right?
Inside. Sorry, I got that.
All good.
Yeah. The monsters woke up. Go.
We're not monsters.
But he wrestled that match really hard, right? And I told him, I was like, dude, after it was over, I was like, you can't worry about people's perceptions. And, after it was over, Mason come back to him. He's like, dude, you've gotten a lot better. Like, you're better than I seen you. And he's like, yeah, man, I've been working hard, And we didn't expect to win, right? But, like, it was the first time where it was like, I'm going after it. If I lose, fine, but I'm going to try. So I think also, like, there's kids, and the only reason I brought that up, and much respect to Jose, dude, he's a freaking stud. The reason I brought that up is that kids, I think, get that mental side at different points in time, right? Like where they can kind of start, I'm not worried about who it is, what it is, where it is. Like for years, dude, I used to get so frustrated, man. We'd wrestle kids from different areas and like, dude, we should beat this kid. And he gets tech fall. And we're like, what the, like, dude, this is killing me. Yeah. So like, I agree with you though. Like you brought up Jackson and Jackson and Harrison. They've been consistent like that for most of their life. Yeah. Right. Like those kind of kids. Bryson hasn't, over the last few years, Dominic, dude, I think he believes he can win anytime he wrestles. Like
they all have their issues. They all have their mental blocks, but I think once they realize that it's just another match, and if we lose, we're doing something wrong and we got to get better. I think it helps a little bit and just to wrestle a little more freely. Obviously, there's pressure to win. A lot of that's pressures on themselves. A lot of pressure put on home, whatever it is. But once they can figure out that everything's going to be okay if I lose and we got to get back in the room and get better, they wrestle a little more freely.
And I think taking that and I'm guilty as that of anybody. You know me, man. I was nuts a few years back. Yes. But dude, if you can take that off of kids and just kind of let them go. And at this point, what's really cool, I'm learning too, and you're a dad, and Zach's a senior this year?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like when you can kind of step back and just let them do it for themselves, like, and you don't feel like you have to, any expectation or anything. I feel like you're right, dude. At that point in time, like they're going to either go after it or not. And I think, I wish I'd have done that 5 or 6 years ago. But dude, I'm so impressed. Always have been. I love you, man. I'm so impressed with what you've been like so part of building there in Cleveland. Like, I love the social media aspect. I love the promotional aspect. I love the intricacy of how you break things down, like with young kids and how quickly you bring them up to speed. And we're talking about a school program. Like, I can't enforce this enough. This is not a training center. This is a school program from top to bottom. And dude, we'll always be up there in the summer. Hopefully, if anybody takes anything away from this conversation, emulate what Cleveland is doing. It works. They built the blueprint of what to do. They built it, and you can see it every day. Go to @Bosken Trained, look at his Instagram. He'll tell you step by step by step by step, just by looking at his Instagram, how we're going to do this and win. Yeah. And he was right about Bradley, because you were talking about how Bradley was beating up Cleveland back in the day. Quan Tall told me in high school he would go to Bradley to train, right? This is before Cleveland become like the powerhouse that it has been. And dude, that whole narrative is on the opposite side now. And it has been for over 10, 15 years at this point.
Yeah.
So dude, just much respect to you. Again, if we can ever do anything for you, we love you, Bosken. This has been awesome. And I know you
got me up moving. Time to head to practice.
Yeah, man. Well, dude, it was great. Had fun. Episode 19 of the Bmoney Beastin podcast in the books.
Check it out.